Me? Treat me like crap? That's going to cost you 5 years' salary. First, some background. A bit over 6 months prior to the start of this story, we had a change up at the company I worked for. The old owner was a great guy that was retiring and handing the company off to his son, a real pose just out of business school type. The son, with the mentality that the company is now his, went about restructuring, namely reassigning teams to different projects, and leaving those that remained in their old positions to pick up double, if not triple, the workload. He did this all in the name of saving a little money. Unfortunately, my department, safety, engineering, of which I was the team lead, was not spared from this effort. In the end, I had it out with the boss and department head, ultimately costing the company 3 months of my entire department working 80+ hour weeks, and forcing a huge year-end bonus to be paid out to us. Unfortunately, after my initial meeting with the new boss, that is the son, he took liking to me, in a really bad way. Essentially, he really liked me, and wanted to go out with me, or sleep with me, or however you want to put it. He even enlisted his friends and secretaries to help him. It went on for months, just blatant sexual harassment. They even made comments about me losing my late husband, that I should just get back on the horse, so to speak. I kept everything, every email, every voicemail, and went to my best friend who happens to be a really good lawyer, a contract lawyer, to be exact, so not exactly their area of expertise, but they knew enough to help. This friend drafted a letter to the boss, essentially a stop or we're going to start a big case over this kind of thing, and yeah, everything stopped. However, I was then moved from working in office to a work from home arrangement. I knew what was coming, they were going to do their best to get rid of me, so I started documenting everything. But as luck would happen, I received an email chain from the bosses. A good friend of mine in the office who was in the email chain added me to the CC list. And wouldn't you know, it was back and forth communication of them discussing how they would get rid of me and pin the blame on me. The email chain was just disgusting. They hated me so badly and wanted me gone, but because of my contract they would have to buy me out. But being the cheapskates they are, you know, they wanted me gone for free. So the company bosses started a campaign to try and torment me. They first tried to say that because now I work from home they were required to install cameras in my home office to make sure I was being productive. Luckily that did not work. You have to love contracts. They also tried assigning an impossible workload to me, but luckily my team and I were almost like family and they picked up the slack. After 3 months of this crap, I get an email and a phone call from the HR department saying I was getting laid off indefinitely because there was just no work for me. This was complete bullshit given that we had several dozen projects we were working on. On a side note, in Ontario there is no such thing as a layoff, as, in the court's eyes, being laid off is considered an active dismissal, which is essentially the same as being fired. After this conversation with HR, I call my lawyer friend, almost in tears, just shouting, "Look what they are doing to me. Help." She calms me down and tells me this is such a good thing, we have so much evidence against them. I had already forwarded and printed everything off that was sent to me, and it was lucky I did because a scant few hours after I was laid off my computer was remotely wiped clean, everything was gone, leaving just a blank desktop. When I called the HR department to get copies of all my filed complaints, what do you know? Everything was gone. In their place was a bunch of bullshit reprimands that never happened, that I never signed or saw, dating months and months back, and all signed by the new boss, despite the fact that they were dated before he ever took control of the company. It was clear they were total bullshit, but I got copies of everything to add to my stack of records. I texted all my old colleagues to let them know what was happening, and that I am basically gone. Like I said earlier, we were like family, and with me on the way out they started looking for better employment. Not only that, but they contacted all their friends who worked for the company to do the same. I was laid off on a Monday, and on Thursday I walked into the office with my employment lawyer. I swear, the main secretary was on the phone to security the second she saw me walk in, and they were at the door in a matter of a minute. My lawyer simply handed her a legal document, a summons to meet for mediation at his office on the next Friday. During the following week I received so many calls and text messages from the bosses, friends, secretaries, and people I knew in the office to just be friendly with the owner, to just drop it, and that they wanted to bring me back and forget about everything. Like hell, I was going back to such a hostile work environment. Friday finally comes, and into my lawyer's office my former boss walks in with a squad of 4 of his lawyers to settle the matter. And off the bat he offers me 3 months severance to end all of this because I didn't have any evidence to rebut the fake paperwork they had on file. At this point my lawyer starts to bring out all the paperwork we had, namely copies of every complaint I had ever filed, which were all signed by the bosses, HR, and myself. Luckily for our case, I had made sure to take a copy of each complaint when it was written up. They didn't think I had anything? Oh boy, were they wrong. My lawyer made the case that in court it would be obvious that all the paperwork they had on their end were forgeries, nothing was signed by me, and he pointed out that there were dates with the boss signature where he wasn't in the country, let alone working for the company yet. At that point the boss and his lawyers went to speak privately. After about a half an hour they came back with a much better offer, a full year's salary. But my lawyer was like, nah, we'll just go with what the contract says plus go for damages in court. Given the recent changeover at the company, the lawyers seemed to know they couldn't afford this going to court, not to mention it would be so bad for the company's reputation. So they basically rolled over and asked, what do you want? We demanded 5 years salary plus the average bonus I would have made for each year plus all the legal fees paid. It was a big win. But it didn't end there. I got a taste of blood and wanted more. I made phone calls to several companies where I had contacts and found jobs for every member of my team, and several members of other teams. By the end of the week the company lost 10 of its most talented people. Not to mention most of those people had friends and colleagues that ended up following them to their new employers. The fallout was pretty bad. Before all of this they had the pick of the litter when new university students graduated. But now, because they lost almost all of their senior people, they had no one to mentor new employees. Plus word got out fast how they treat workers like crap, so no one with any talent would even think of getting near the company. As of today the company is just a shell of its former self. It's still big, but it bleeds money. They also now have a problem with permanent staffing and are paying out the nose to hire subcontractors. Let's just say they don't make money like they used to. In fact, they have not started any new projects in something like 9 months. If something isn't done on the side of management to improve things fast, they will likely be going bankrupt in the very near future. Edit, I didn't really think this post would blow up. It is still happens fairly recently. Like I have really loved Reddit, I just never thought I was interesting enough to actually share anything, but I am glad I have. It's been a great place to get things off my chest. Also the fact people have enjoyed reading stories from my life has just made it so much better. Credit to you / the Jackarmo1 for editing my punctuation and grammar, thanks you. Stalker boss ends up regretting it. I've just discovered this sub and I have the perfect story for it. It won't be a long one because it happened about 4 years ago and I'm fuzzy on the exact details, but it's still a belter. I used to work in a convenience store, and the store manager was a real prick. Misogynistic. Offensive, as in haha cancer is hilarious. Offensive. Creepy and a downright bully. Sometime after I left, he was fired after he decided to turn a professional interview with a young woman into a conversation about her favorite porn. She reported him and he got the sack. Awesome. Anyway, this guy, we'll call him Andy, fancied himself as a real leader. I mean he wasn't. He set impossible tasks and yelled instructions whilst doing absolutely nothing in the office in the meantime. I had a colleague called Gabby who, TBH, I didn't get on with. However, I knew that at the time she was having a really tough time at home with her 3-month-old son. One day in the winter, it had snowed fairly heavily. Gabby rang in that morning and told Andy she couldn't make it in as she was snowed in. Everybody knew that wouldn't have been true, and that it was likely she hadn't slept well with the baby crying and whatnot. But you know what, who cares? She always worked hard and she deserved a break. It was only a 4-hour shift and the store was dead anyway. No customers were gonna walk over snow and ice for the morning paper. plus we were actually overstaffed. However, Andy had a problem with women. He was always disrespectful and demeaning. Like the rest of us, he knew she wouldn't be snowed in, but he didn't let it lie. He wanted to catch her out. Andy abandoned the store, serious gross misconduct, and got in his car. He made the 15-minute drive all the way to Gab's house and took pictures of her car, her front driveway and the rest of the street, to prove she wasn't snowed in. He then called her into the office at the end of the week for a disciplinary. When she came out, she was in tears. She was on a final warning. Andy wouldn't want a dismissal on his quarterly record, so he basically just threatened her instead. This didn't sit well with anybody. We hated him anyway, but he went too far, making a single mum cry over something so ridiculous. Well, here's the good part. What Andy didn't realize was that on the last work night out, he has drunkenly revealed to the team that he was a serial cheat. He would regularly cheat on his wife of 18 years. He also has 2 teenage sons. He would justify it as having natural male hunger. If you've ever heard a more disturbing quote, Andy used to tell his wife that on an evening he finished at 11. This was a lie. He never worked later than 9. After an evening shift he'd go and F whichever side piece he had going at the time. Well, one evening, he finished at 9 and he got in his car and started driving. What he didn't realize was that Gab, who wasn't on shift that day, had dropped her son at her mum's house and had waited outside the store in her car for Andy to leave. She tailed his car all the way to his hookup house and parked 3 houses down. She then proceeded to take pictures of Andy hugging and kissing this random woman, before pulling her inside and slamming the door. You can see where this is going. Andy didn't come into work for a week. When we saw him next, he looked broken. His wife had been anonymously sent the pictures of him getting off with another woman. She'd kicked him out and had contacted a solicitor to start a divorce process. His sons had blocked his number and wanted nothing to do with him. Of course he knew who sent the pictures. But he had no proof, no evidence. Gabby stayed at the store for another 3 months before moving into a recruitment position for a pharmaceutical company. As far as I know, she's still there today, and doing well. As for Andy, I have no idea whether the divorce went through or not. I blocked him on all social media after I left the company, about a month after this whole thing. What I do know is that he's a disgusting, reprehensible human being who thought he was invincible. He thought he could walk all over people, bullying and belittling as he went. Well, he soon realized that nobody is invincible, and I thoroughly enjoyed watching his collapse. End.